The original Scream celebrates its 25th anniversary this year, and there was a re-release in theaters, so that is how I decided to spend my Halloween evening. This is my review of Scream. A year removed from the murder of her mother, Sidney Prescott is terrorized by a new killer who targets her and her friend using horror films as a part of a deadly game. Now, before I properly start with my review, I want you to let me know your thoughts on Scream in the comments below. Start the conversation, because that's always the most important part. And while you're down there, make sure you click the subscribe button if you like what you see here, so you do not miss any further conversations about your favorite movies and TV. Just a little bit of backstory in case you're new to the channel. Welcome and thank you for clicking on this video. I've become sort of infamous for not being a huge fan of Scream. I've seen them all. I think they're all alright. I just never put them on a high standard for me. So yesterday was Halloween. I decided to take a trip to the cinema and watch it for the first time on the big screen. And Scream is better than I remember. Now, let me get my issues out of the way. I don't think it's a very scary movie, no pun intended, given the entire franchise this film created inadvertently. It is at its worst when it is a slasher film. I like all the use of the commentary and the meta jokes and whatnot. I just don't think it's a very scary film, and when it is trying to be a slasher film, I don't really buy it. I like the use of Ghostface as a human. He's a real human being that could exist, and we'll get to the positives in a bit. I just don't think it's very scary. The tension is just never there, but it is a really fun movie. And now we get to our positives, because this film is a riot. I had a ton of fun watching this on the big screen, and the biggest strength of Scream for me is when it's working as a murder mystery, as you're trying to figure out who this is, because you know it's someone. This is not a big monster like Michael Myers or Jason or Freddy. This is anyone. This is someone that we know, that we're witnessing in the film, that our characters know, that has some sort of relationship and backstory and has interacted with our characters. And I think that's what makes Scream interesting, because it's one of those films that Wes Craven picked up all his talents as a horror film director, and he makes fun of the tropes and conventions of this genre, of the slasher genre, and uses it to the film's advantage. He not only makes fun of it, but he super analyzes the conventions and basic classic story beats of these films that make them work. He's not making fun of them as, oh, they all do the same and it's no, he's kind of celebrating it throughout this entire film, and I really like that. And when it comes to Ghostface, I think he's an interesting killer in the way he likes to play with his victims. And spoilers, by the way, we'll talk freely about this film because it's 25 years old, by the way. I like when we don't know who Ghostface is, because we're seeing all the little clues, and I had seen it before, so I was looking at all the little clues throughout the film. Who goes out of the screen? Who comes back into the screen? What was the last thing they said or did before going out? And what's the first thing they do when they come back in? I think that's all very interesting, and I think the characters are all very interesting. Let's start with Sidney Prescott. Like, again, I don't love Scream or anything, but Sidney Prescott is a fucking badass. I love Sidney Prescott. And a ton of my friends who know I don't love Scream are going to now cut this part out of the video. So I'll say it again. I fucking love Sidney Prescott. She's awesome. She is vulnerable. She's got a traumatic past, but she's still super likable as someone who is fighting to maintain a balance of a relationship and trying to overcome that trauma to just have a fucking life, man. I think Neve Campbell does a tremendous job in this film, and I think the character of Sidney Prescott is one of the best final girls we have ever had, and this makes me fall in love with her tremendously. Let's talk about the ghost faces in this film, which are Billy Loomis, which a reference to Halloween's Sam Loomis, which I really like, and Stu. I think it's really interesting how Wes Craven portrays them as like this monster as they have the mask on. As we don't know who is behind the mask, could be anyone, and it's this very frightening figure. As soon as they take the mask off, he really portrays them as these pathetic, cringy teenagers that just think what they're doing right now is really cool. But I think it's important how Wes portrays them as, no, this is really not cool. You guys are kind of pathetic. I think that's brilliant. I think that's an amazing addition to the film in itself and to the character dynamics at play that we see. And obviously, we learn that they were the ones who murdered Sydney's mother and whatnot, and then they blamed the other guy played by Liev Schreiber, which again, much like the opening scene, which I didn't talk about because everyone has talked about that opening scene, a really good red herring when it comes to Liev Schreiber, like, oh, okay, it's a famous actor, so of course it was him, he's the bad guy, and maybe he is Ghostface, but no, completely red herring and threw us off of the real killer, turns out. I think Scream just does a really good job when it comes to the characters and the character dynamics leading into what will eventually be the killer by the end. Again, I don't love this film because I think the horror aspect of it all is the one that really doesn't work for me. And again, I think it's a smart film in celebrating the tropes and conventions, but it does also use those same tropes and conventions. It's just very aware of it. Despite appreciating all these qualities such as the characters, the cleverness, I stand by my issues that I mentioned at the beginning, and I can't lie, it is still not one that hits me close to the chest. It doesn't connect with me on a personal level. I think it's really fun, but I also think it's very surface level when it comes to the story itself, the plotting of it all. It's just not one that connects with me as much as I see it connecting with a ton of other people. Like I said, I love Sidney Prescott. I think Neve Campbell's performance elevates this film and that character above everything else, honestly. This is just fun. It's surface level, but surface level is not a bad thing. I go to these films to have a fun time and figure out who the killer is and be engaged in that sense. To me, as soon as we get the reveal of Billy and Stu, it is clever how Wes plays with these characters, how he shows them to an audience. But to me, it loses a little bit of the magic, of the essence, knowing who the killers are. Because to me, the figuring out of it, the mystery of it, is the best part of this film. It's the magic of this film. Scream is better than I remembered. It holds up really well all these years later. It's the type of fun horror film that we miss nowadays. And given that the new one is being made by the people who made Ready or Not, which is one of the most fun horror films I've ever seen in my entire life, I think this franchise is in good hands. Scream is a clever and fun horror classic that holds up so much better than I remembered, and to this day it still rings true with all its meta jokes and poking fun at the conventions, even if it is poking fun at itself. I'm giving Scream a B. I honestly never thought I was going to enjoy this film as much as I did, but here we are. So those are my thoughts on Scream. I want to know what you think of Scream. How do you rank all the films in the franchise? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you saw here, number one, let me know if you want to see reviews for the rest of the Scream movies. And make sure you click the subscribe button so you do not miss any future conversations about your favorite movies and TV. Thank you so much for watching once again. You guys are the best, and I'll be back very soon with more reviews. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.